Hello everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of Heartfelt Conversations. This time I have with me another very special guest. But before I bring her on stage, I do want to apologize to her as well. I'm sure she's listening in. This conversation was supposed to happen a month ago, but then I happened to fall ill and the entire schedule got derailed. But now that all is back on track, I'm very thrilled to be back here. We've been having these lovely conversations with guests from different walks of life, with different years of experience, from different backgrounds, to help us understand careers and growth in very different ways. And Komal is yet another remarkable individual who have requested to join us this evening. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I just want her to be on stage as well along with me, and then we'll kick it on from there. Hello, Komal. How are
Hi
you?
Vikas, how are you?
Good, all well. Good to see you. And thank you so
Same here.
much for joining us this evening on a heartfelt conversation. I know this has been long due, and I've been waiting for it very keenly. I'm sure our audience has been as well. And before we kick into the real conversation, I just want to let them know why you are one of the chosen few people I've invited today. And the reason is very simple. You're doing something very unique, very interesting in the branding space. And I've obviously followed you on LinkedIn. I've seen some of the content that you've shared, which I'll absolutely love. And I've seen the growth and shift also of that content. So I'm going to use that as your introduction more than actually what you've done, because that we'll hear from you in any case, right? Uh, the first thing I noticed about your content, Komal, was this very amazing, you could say, career chart you prepared, which utilized a caricature of yourself, a cartoon like image, which was on a bright yellow popping background. And it just stood out for me because that was something fresh, that was something unique. In the corporate world, I've been used to seeing, growth charts and revenue charts, and they always seem to be in that typical graph-like manner. They always seem to be very data-oriented. But here was someone positioning herself, presenting herself in a very creative and unique way, and it showed your highs, it showed your lows as you've grown, and that to me was really inspiring. And that moment itself, this was much before this podcast was even a germ in my mind, that I said I need to talk to Komal sometime and just get to know her a little better. So that was the germ of the idea. And then along the way, obviously, I've seen your content. Now, dear watchers, listeners from across the world, whoever's joined us this evening, note one thing. There are realities that Komal is one of those content creators who's not throwing numbers at your face every day and saying how I helped a client scale up $1 million in 1 week and all of that. That's another validation point for me, because that means you're being very real, you're being very truthful to your community. And I think that was another very strong factor for me to bring you in. And most recently, I've seen the great work you're doing with your reels. We know that LinkedIn is promoting that as a solid content sharing mechanism right now. And I like the way you've kind of quickly got onto the wave. You've created some very interesting, very unique, very inspiring videos, which always have a lot of content and strong message in them. So, Komal, every day when I come across your post, I'm learning something new and fresh, and thank you for that. Today, I'm sure during this conversation, we'll learn a lot more from you, and that's the reason I'd like to welcome you once again. Apologies for this very long monologue, but really, we want to hear from you today. So, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for saying such good things about me. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. So yeah, I'm basically from Gujarat. I was born and brought up there. I did my education there, and I done my animation and VFX course there actually. And when I was growing up and I was in my college, animation was the new field. It was supposed to take over everything, like AI is taking over everything today. So at that point in time, I learned animation, and I quickly realized that there is not much work related to animation in the city that I was living in, which was Ahmedabad. And but there was a lot of work of static graphic design, which we were taught as the base for animation. And since I wanted to stick around there, I started just working with what was available. Made the most of it. And while I started working with static graphics, I realized how much I enjoyed it. And that was actually the start to even understanding what the term brand means or branding means. Before that, it was all a very different world for me. So as I got into it, I realized I wanted to learn a little bit more. I joined NID for a short course, and that is where I actually understood the nuances on what really goes behind building a brand. And immediately after that, I moved to Bombay because I got married here. And like any other person, I started working with companies. 3 years down the line, I realized I was not really enjoying it as much because I was always I felt I was not given the whole picture, because when you're working in an organization, your path is actually narrowed down to what you were supposed to do, and that was not something I was used to as an individual. So I took the experience, and then 3 years later, I was like, you know what, let me give it a shot. I think I'll be much happier doing my own thing. And yes, 7 years down the line, like 7 years back, I founded my own brand called Project. We specialize in creating, building brand identities and packaging design for business brands. That is what we did for the first 5 years. And since the last 2 years, since personal branding has come up, and I myself started my personal branding journey, I realized there is a gap in the market because everyone I spoke to was talking about the algorithm, how LinkedIn is working, or how different platforms work. But nobody was really telling you how, like, there's a difference between a business and a brand. There is a difference between being online and, getting attention, getting the right attention, basically. That's called being a personal brand. And nobody was talking about the branding aspect of it. So I jumped into that as well. And since the last 2 years, again, we have been working with personal brands. And yeah, it's been a great journey so far.
Superb. Lovely to hear that, Komal. And I think the audience also has been sort of already chiming in with their comments. Everyone very excited about today's conversation. We have people understanding the importance of personal branding and even branding for an organization, which is what different audience members have been already commenting. So one thing I did kind of pick up from your sharing was the fact that Bombay or Ahmedabad's loss has been Mumbai's gain.
Hope so.
Yeah, looks like it clearly. But interesting. So you start with a project, and that's more of a. If correct me if I'm wrong, but as a company focused more on the product side of branding, or is it more on the personal branding side, or individual focused space?
No, so it's mainly for business branding. So that's our 80-90% of our work is for business brands. And we mainly work with consumer facing brands. So it would involve, researching whether your product is market fit, what's the perception of the already, launched products in that category, giving your business a brand name, a brand logo, all the visual aspects of it. So it's mainly business focused. Personal branding is just 20% of it. And in fact, for personal branding, we only work with founders. We don't work with the other people that who are trying to build a personal brand, because our expertise lies in the people that we're already dealing with. So we've kind of stuck to our niche.
Understood. So a follow-up question there then is, as an organization which is, let's say, producing a product, that's definitely a space you're operating in, correct? The packaging and the branding
Yes.
of it.
Yes.
What about services? Because in our community, my community specifically, I do have a lot of coaches. I do have a lot of individuals who are running consulting setups, who are running small training organizations. Uh, is there a play you have there, and is there an importance of branding for such folks?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, whether you're a product based company or you're a service based company, branding is equally important for both. So, what branding essentially means is you're developing a trust or a reputation in the minds of your consumer. And that's equally important for a service based or a product based industry. How you go about doing it is different from the back end. But the visual assets may also differ, for a service based industry to a product based industry. But branding definitely is needed, and definitely we are involved in those kind of brands as well. In fact, we recently finished a project with a portfolio management service based out of Bombay.
Wow, interesting. And that should take us actually into the thrust of our main discussion today, which is appropriately titled then the linkage between brand and revenue. Because I often find a lot of folks struggling on that account. They're able to go to a agency or to an, let's say, graphic designer that they know and say, design this logo for me, and I'll start using it on my website, I'll use it in my LinkedIn communication, and so on and so forth. But does it really frankly translate into revenue, or is it just feel good factor that I have this nice fancy logo like the one I have, the HR in my heart?
Yeah, so see, the perception of what branding is not very clear in the consumer's mind today. So people always feel that just getting a logo designed or just having three or four colors is what branding is. That's not the gist of branding. That's just the visual aspect that you see outside. So I always tell my clients that branding is like a puzzle. Everything is one piece, and everything needs to come together in the right manner at the right time for it to make sense, which also means strategy is a big part of branding. Some amount of marketing activities are also linked to branding. So, when we talk about brand strategy, there are several terms like creating brand awareness, brand differentiation, brand loyalty. All of these are part of branding, which is more on the strategy side as opposed to the visual aspect side. And that is more important, and that's the key foundation of branding. Only after you've done your brand strategy correctly do you go ahead and you design the visual aspects that you actually see. So, for example, for your logo HR in my heart, this may be a simple logo because you wanted to start something. But if you're launching a bigger brand, there'll be an entire brand strategy that will be done to understand who your target audience is, what are you trying to achieve, what are the four pillars of your branding, what's the vision, mission statement, all of that. And then from all of that, we'll derive to something which is called your brand name. It may not even be HR in your heart. And then we'll go on to designing something that's a visual aspect. So everything is linked, and when everything is linked, it matters or it has an impact on the revenue. If you're just going to pull out a logo out of a ready-made software and say that I'm using this again and again and I see no impact because there is no strategy behind it. You've just pulled it out of wherever you felt was right and you've been using it. So that will definitely not have an impact on revenue. So the strategy part is key for you to get it done correctly to link it to revenue per se.
Sure. That's very insightful. And at this point, I'll just request the audience to drop in their questions if they have any, because I do have a few already popping up in my mind as I speak to you, and I'm going to be bombarding you with those as we go forward. But this show is more about getting answers for our audience, and the more questions we get from them, we'll try and address those. Right. So. You spoke about how branding has to be seen in a very deep manner, not just limited to a logo, and that is, in a sense, yes, of course, eye opener in many ways. At the same time, I also realized that as a custodian of a brand, as someone who owns that brand, it's also very difficult at times to be able to command the price that you want to basis that brand, right? I mean, because when you go pitch your services as a coach, as a training agency to, let's say, another large corporate, and this was the conversation I was having with a set of creators just yesterday. Taking a very simplistic example, one of the trainers was able to pitch a service or a training program to a client at about 30,000 a day for a 5-day workshop. He lost that deal to someone who's willing to come in at 7,000 a day. I mean, how does that individual compete, right? Without, let's say, a strong brand, without the muscle behind it. So that's where I think people face a problem. So how do you help them move from the brand to actually being able to realize the revenue which they ideally should be deserving, or at least in their minds desiring?
So, like I said, for a brand, there are several aspects. The first thing that's existent is brand awareness. So, you need to have visibility for yourself on your brand, right? What happens is, as coaches, it's a service-based industry, right? We invest so much into ourselves, and we invest so much into what we want to teach or what we want to give out to the world, that we forget that showing our face across or telling people that we exist and our services exist is a big part of it, which most coaches forget to do. So, the first thing is you need to have brand awareness or visibility in place. Once you start having brand awareness for a typical coach or an expert, the key thing that you have to generate in your audience's mind is trust. Okay. So, for a simple example, there are two different products, just to compare it to a different space. There are two different products. And Apple is charging 1,20,000 for an iPhone, and any other Android phone is charging 50,000 for their phone. Yeah, fair comparison. The features are similar. It's not that Android phones are unable to give that feature. Why do you go and buy an Apple phone? It's because Apple has been able to generate that trust in your mind, right? Apple has been able to generate that click in your mind that if it's Apple, it's the best. If it's Apple, you're getting something different, right? When there is proof shown that Samsung cameras have been proved much better than Apple cameras. And still, whenever there is a new iPhone released, as an Apple user, I'll go ahead and upgrade it. It's actually 90%. An Apple user, like out of 100 Apple users, 90% Apple users upgrade for an iPhone, right? So this is called building a brand, right? The
Yeah.
branding is actually influencing your audience's psychology, right? You have to understand how your audience is thinking, and you have to feed them with the correct information at the correct time. Okay. Going back to somebody like an Apple, there is something called as confirmation bias. Yeah. Now, what does confirmation bias mean? If I feel that Apple is good, whenever I'm looking for a review, I will always look at good reviews for Apple. Anything that criticizes Apple, I'll negate it, right? If there is a group and somebody comes and tells me, hey, Apple is not good and Samsung is better, I'll start defending Apple that, hey, the interface is much better, but hey, the connectivity is much better. Yeah. Why does that happen? Initially, Apple built their trust much before anybody else could, right? Second, they introduced brand loyalty programs. So whenever I'm exchanging an Apple iPhone to upgrade another Apple, I get that value back, which is a good value if my phone is in a good condition. The third is whenever they are launching an iPhone, right before that, if you see all the marketing campaigns, they already have the data. What is the consumer more inclined to from an Apple product? So the three things for an Apple product are integrated system service,
Yep.
privacy, yeah, and yeah. So if you take these two, privacy and integrated system services, every time you see an Apple ad, they will keep repeating the same thing, right? So they know that the users are looking at something like this. They know that the users love the sleek design that Apple is giving, right? So every single ad will kind of promote it. So how much ever criticism or comparison you do of something else, because your mind is so stuck to it, you will always go and buy an iPhone, right? Now the same comparison can be used in a service-based industry, right? So for my client, I need to understand what my audience is going to get attracted to, right? And that comes with experimentation. Whether I'm putting out content, whether I'm putting out pitches, I need to have enough data to understand how my audience is reacting, right? So for a service-based industry, we would first understand what's the product differentiator or what's the service differentiator. If I'm a coach, of course, I have something in me that's different to the other coach. So that needs to come out very prominently in your positioning statement one, and in the way you communicate to your audience. That needs to come out repeatedly. Now that differentiating factor will actually connect you or resonate you with your audiences very strongly, right? Then again comes in the loyalty program. Yeah, you can build loyalty programs. You can always offer better packages. Yeah. And the third thing is trust. For a service-based industry, trust is key. There are several psychological concepts that you can use to actually go ahead and build trust. The moment you combine all of this, you will be able to charge whatever you want to your audience and nothing can stop you. So it's just the perception that you have to create. You need to work on it. You cannot say that the first time I come and tell you, hey, Vikas, I'm better than an X brand strategist that you've met, you're not going to believe me. You will believe me because you've seen my content several times on LinkedIn. Every morning I show my face saying something or the other, which you've resonated with, right? You could have called anybody else today, but you chose to call me because I went there and I repeated myself enough number of times, right? And that is how you're able to call me today. That is
Yeah.
what my differentiating factor is. So you need to work on that. And the moment you do that, you can charge 50,000 and people will still pay that.
Superb. I think that should be music to the ears of many of my community members. But you know what, Komal, I'm going to have to edit out these last 10 minutes because I'm a huge Apple fanboy and I was not too kicked by what you were saying. But no, jokes apart, I think you made total sense. And yeah, you're right because the way Apple has managed to create its brand space, I think no one else. And whether it's a product company, whether it's an individual or a service organization, I think each one would love to be in that space where when the 16 Pro has just been launched and we heard about queues forming outside the store at 4 a.m. in the morning. I mean, that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But that's the power of the brand, right? It's not that people don't have a phone or they won't be able to breathe the next day if they don't have it. But yeah, I mean, to each his own. But that
Yeah,
shows you, like you rightly said, the power of the brand. And for a coach, that can be very heartening to hear that you don't really have to undercut yourself. You have to make sure that you work on your brand understand what you want, how you want to position yourself, and create that unique niche for yourself. So hopefully over the next few minutes of this conversation, we'll also delve a little bit deeper into that, and I'd love to pick your brains in how one could do that. uh, I know for a fact that knowing my community, I think more are on the service side. So probably the more we discuss the service space, it'll just be more valuable to them. So we'll try and do that.
Absolutely.
Another question which I had, which is something that I remember from my MBA days, the marketing classes, which were truly enjoyable. When we used to study all these case studies, we had this four P's of marketing. And has the digital world, has today's social world kind of changed that, upgraded that?
I would say they are relevant, but I also feel that people and processes were not really part of the four Ps initially, right? And today, Gen Z being leveraged into the picture, which becomes a key player, social media being leveraged into the picture, people and processes have become much more important. And what I mean by that is whether you have a product based firm or you have a service based firm, it's necessary to actually show the founder's face. It's necessary to show the team's face. You have to show all of this while you're marketing, because the other end is connecting with the person sitting on the other side, right? They're not connecting with just a logo or just your marketing creative anymore. Also, with social media playing a huge role, BTS behind the scenes is becoming much more active. People connect with what is going behind the scenes, right?
Mm.
So for a coach, if if I'm taking a workshop, what I always do is I always take snapshots of how I'm prepping for the workshop. So there's a certain list that I have in front of me. There are certain tools that I use. There'll be a light setup. There'll be a mic setup. There'll be XYZ things. So showing all of this actually resonates with your audience much more, right? So if I'm going for a meeting, I will show how I'm prepping for going for that meeting, right? What are the essentials in my mind? If I'm traveling, via cab or a bus, that is also actually, documented these days. So all of this really builds relatability, right? So while the four P's of marketing are very, very relevant today, but
Mm.
there are other things also that have come to the picture which are connecting more with the younger audiences. So that needs to be taken into account and kind of mixed it up with the initial, four P's, and then probably marketing needs to be delivered.
Superb. So processes and people. I think you've already expanded that list to six P's. So I think Kotler should be very proud of you. So interesting, because when you talk about processes, yes, of course, I mean nothing. And we were discussing this before the show started, that everything that you're doing, whether it's your posts, also this podcast, which I'm doing, a lot of it is thanks to setting the right processes, because that's how you crunch timelines. And in these times, that's your number one skill. How you can do more in the same 24 hours. And of course people, because again, for uh, the repeating myself, but since services businesses are where India is really more strong at this point, currently at least, I think people are the core asset. And the way and we are able to manage or to leverage this talent, grow them, showcase them, I think will differentiate one business from the other. So thanks for bringing that out. At Project, how do you do this? Because I know when we are again talking, you shared something very interesting, which is that I think your entire team is remote.
Yeah.
Correct? Wow, that's very impressive, because even as a working professional, I know that remote working has its own challenges. Uh, Managing entire business, running your own P&L with a completely distributed team must be having its dimensions of its own. Why don't you share a bit about that, because that also will be of value to our audience.
Sure. So, we are a boutique agency. So, we are a six people team. We are not really a huge team. So, it's easier for us to be remote and be functional at the same time. Also, I grew my business in COVID. So, before COVID, it was just me and one more person. We were just two people. And during the lockdown, a lot of my clients actually grew, because of which my business grew. And at that point in time, I had no option but to scale virtually, right? And I got talents from, because I had been based out of Gujarat, I had a lot of connections there. So whenever I was like, needing more resources, and since virtually was the in thing today, I actually tapped into the resources I already had, which were from Gujarat. I tapped in a few resources from LinkedIn itself. I used to put out posts, and I got a resource from Assam,
Wow.
and they're so good. And because of that, 1.5 year of making sure that everything was working for us virtually, we are so set in our ways that it just made more sense to continue that. And I saw the benefit in it because one, there were a lot of different softwares that were coming out to kind of manage the processes, and there are n number of it. You can just choose whatever works for you. We work Notion because I started with Notion and I've kind of grown, to it. So I just use Notion for everything. The good part about my business is each individual part in strategy or designing can be assigned to a different person. There is less that, it's not like six people need to sit together and figure out a solution. It's like two individual people can be given one task. They can figure out, what they are supposed to do that part. I can review it and then pass it on to the third person. So because of the kind of way my business is expanded and because of the processes or the different categories it has, it's easy for me to kind of delegate work to different people. They can do their individual work. The only thing is they need to finish it in time, which is very easy if you kind of communicate it well to them. You kind of check up on them continuously. Like I have a system where every day in the morning when I get to work, the first 1 hour is just checking in with everyone on what they require, right? And the immediate next 1 hour is actually providing them with what they require. So the first 2 hours of my day is always blocked for the team, because once I give away everything to the team, at least their entire day is sorted, right? No work is going to get stuck because I get, if I'm on the commute or if I'm in a meeting or for
Mhm.
whatever reasons I'm doing something else. So I laid this out very early in the virtual days. And at the end of the day, again, I make sure that I take an account from the team as to where they are. So I'm better prepared for the next day. Just very simple things, nothing too complicated. Using Notion to track everything has kind of helped me a lot. But yeah, that's about it. Communicating the right roles and responsibilities has kind of helped me grow.
Amazing. I think you make it sound so simple, Komal. I'm just blown away with that 2 minute, 3 minute sharing of yours. Had so many brilliant points within itself. It was about reviewing, it was about goal setting, it was about setting the right process flows, and much, much more. And I think I'm going to watch that again and try and just kind of reiterate and understand and absorb that better, because I would request my audience to do that as well, because frankly, that is the only way you can make remote work efficient and effective for your organization, right? And you're doing it, of course, like you mentioned, completely 100% remote, so hats off to you. I also want to let my audience know at this stage that we are also looking for more questions. I already have a few in the chat which I will bring up at the appropriate time, so hang in there. But the best question will win a copy of my HR in my heart, which is something that Komal will pick the winner. So make sure that
Wow.
you drop in the question during the next 5 to 10 minutes. So superb. And Komal, that also makes me wonder, because we are living in very interesting times, right? So Notion is something you mentioned as a workspace platform, and that's something I've been trying to figure out. So I need a masterclass from you from on that for sure. I'm going to hold you on that. The other one is when it comes to design, which is your forte, which is your space. I've been personally using Canva a lot, and I would consider myself advanced stage, if not expert. And how does that impact an agency like yours or a business like yours? Because today these platforms are making tasks which are so difficult for us 3 4 5 years ago to just be available at a click of a few buttons. So tell us about that.
So, I think it's very important to pivot yourself when you see a change like this in the market. When we started, of course, Canva was nobody in the, like, it was nowhere in the space. And when I started in Ahmedabad, in fact, the first few logo design requests that used to come was people were so inclined to copying the West. They would pull out a logo that the West has been using and they would say that, what, just exactly replicate it and this is what we want. Honestly, that's bad work for people like us, right? We hate doing it, but because the audience was asking for it, we had no choice sometimes but to provide it, other times to try and make them understand that, hey, this is not how it works. So I would say Canva has been a boon for me specifically, simply because I love working with founders who understand the importance of brand strategy and then converting that brand strategy into visuals, right? So Canva can give you visuals, it cannot give you the brand strategy part. One. So the core is kind of missing. The foundation that we set our designing on is kind of missing from Canva. What that helps in is people with smaller budgets who are just starting out, who actually don't require a big brand strategy to test out their initial trial sidekick or side business, I would say. For them, Canva is easier. And for us, we don't get those kind of clients, right? So, which means we get the better, bigger kind of clients that we actually want to
Hmm.
work on. Also, when these smaller businesses that have just started out, they kind of use Canva, eventually within 1, 2, 3 years, it's a business that's running, right? So
Yeah.
you are earning a certain amount of money, and then you think of scaling it. The moment you think of scaling it, you want a professional to come in, because now you want to scale it. You have the money, you would want to invest it, because initially start karne ke liye Canva is okay, right? So once you want to take out money from your running business, it's okay for you to go a little over budget. It's okay for you when I tell you, hey, because you know what, only a brand logo will not suffice. You will require a smaller brand booklet. It may come at a 10-20% additional cost, but this is the benefit for it. From a running business, it'll be easier for you to actually take out that money and create that whole thing, which means as a brand strategist or a brand designer, I'm able to create a better impact for my client, which means my work portfolio is better, right? So if you actually change your thinking a little bit, and if you see where you can actually use that tool for yourself, it works great. In fact, we also as designers give a lot of Canva templates to our existing clients, because we understand social media has become one key thing which was not there earlier when we started, right?
Yeah.
And churning out social media designs day after day is a task, right? And if you don't require those heavy marketing campaigns, it's easy for us also to create Canva templates and give it to you, which are editable Canva templates. And somebody like a junior graphic designer or somebody from your team, maybe you yourself, you can just edit stuff out yourself and keep posting the very not heavy or design heavy posts. So we kind of strike a balance in the social media part of it, or even the presentation part of it. A lot of PPTs and a lot of social media content we develop on Canva, the pro version. A lot of it is designed in our softwares, but imported it in Canva. And then, we just give out the editable version to our clients. So it's easier on them. It's easier on us. The initial templates may cost a lot, but then the longevity is there, because you don't need to hire somebody
Hmm.
else to kind of do the work. So you need to figure out a balance, and I think it can work for you very easily.
Superb. So that's a great insight you've shared. Most you're saying organizations or small setups would prefer to invest on brand strategy later down in the life cycle, is what I heard you say. Is that correct? Great. But tell
Absolutely,
me,
absolutely.
from an experience standpoint, from a knowledge standpoint, would you rather have, or would you be able to, or maybe that's not the right way to put it, but would you rather guide founders to invest in that right at the start stage itself, or would that have longer uh, returns?
If
Or
you have the funding, yes. So it's really important to understand what kind of a founder are you.
Hmm.
Some founders are first generational, some are second generational founders. Some have been in the space for a longer time, and they have that kind of funding and knowledge to launch. So it depends on what's the scale that you're trying to launch. If you're launching at a big scale, 200% you need to invest in branding. But if it's like a side gig and you're trying to experiment for that, then don't invest in something like this. You might as well get something ready made or hire a very basic junior designer. AI is giving out logos these days, not just Canva. So figure out that. Try and see if your idea works. If you're at that stage where you don't know if your idea is going to work, that is good when you use Canva. But if you're very sure that you're going to launch a full-fledged business, your product market fit testing is done, you're 200% sure of investing an X amount to market it, then there is no option but then to go for a brand strategy and branding, because that's going to change your game.
Brilliant. I think that is superb guidance and really hit home. Uh, the audience is already throwing in some questions, and we have a good bank now to select our best question from. And most of them, interestingly, Komal, seem to be in the space of personal branding. I think that's a huge focus area, I guess, for all professionals nowadays. So before we segue into the audience questions, I just have one question to set as the base for this next segment of ours. Uh, when it comes to these personal brands, what are top 2 or 3 things that one should keep in mind from your standpoint?
While starting to create a personal brand for
Yes.
themselves, the first thing that I've always seen my clients do is they want to be perfect. They feel that their first post that they are launching is the announcement post, as if Karan Joe is launching them on a platform. It's not like that. So they need to understand their first post is, it's important to get started rather than be perfect. Nobody is launching them. There is no launch pad that's been provided for them. So they need to get out of their head and make sure that they take action and just don't procrastinate over it. Because 90% people do this, whomever I've met. They just don't want to start because they feel they're not ready, or it's not perfect, the photo's not good enough, the video's not edited enough. Nothing matters. The second thing is, I believe hugely in personality driven personal brands. So, when we say people connect with people, people actually connect with certain traits of that individual. You don't connect with the entire human being because it's not possible for you to digest and understand that entire human being from a social media platform. So, it's very important for you to understand what your key personality traits are. Play on that while you're writing your content, because that is something that will resonate with your audience very strongly. What I mean by that is, some people are very poetic, some are warm and welcoming. Some of them are very knowledgeable and actually talk always in stats and facts. Some of them have a witty side to them, so they can add humor to their content. It's very important to recognize what's your brand personality key trait is, use it as a differentiator, and then go with it. So it will help you kind of build that kind of presence and kind of build that kind of credibility much more easily than just otherwise. So these are the two things I always, and of course consistency is something that always everyone talks about. It's a no-brainer. You need to be consistent. You need to show yourself again and again for people to remember you, for nothing else.
Super. And listening to you is just like, honestly, opening a marketing textbook like a Kotler, and the amount of jargon and terminology that you used, it gives me confidence. Honestly speaking, I'm saying this very seriously, Komal, because it reminds me of my MBA class. It reminds me that you are a subject matter expert, which is what really is the objective of bringing guests onto the show about. So it's truly nice of you to do that, and I think motivates me also to get a brand audit of myself done by you at some point, if I can afford you. That is.
Would love to. Would love to.
Super. So let's bring on some of the questions from the audience. Alvin has dropped this question in towards the early start of this conversation, and then, sorry, Alvin, for bringing you up so late. But the question is: does personal branding complement organizational brand, or is it a deviation from the core of the organization brand? So
So yeah, so found anybody in the organization is actually most confused about this. So you have to understand your organization's brand is a very refined version of what your brand or what your organization is doing. It's a more polished version, right? Your personal brand is the more authentic version of it, right? So if I just talk about, because I work with founders more, just taking that example. So for example, your business has received funding, right? Now there are two pages. There is a personal branding page and there is a brand page. So on the brand page, you may just break out the news in a very professional manner, stating that, probably who's your investor, what's the funding that you've received, what are the different ways that you're going to actually use that funding in the organization to kind of better the products or the services that they have, right? It's very, very factual, it's very polished, it's very bullet point oriented, right? Now, if a founder or somebody who's involved in that process of procuring the funding writes a post about it, it will be very emotion driven, right? So it will be like how tedious or how easy the process was to actually prepare the pitch for the funding. What was going on minutes before, when you entered the, meeting the investor for the funding, what actually happened during the funding round, how easy or difficult it is for founders to take feedback from the investors when they get on the spot, how difficult it is for them to evaluate the offers that they get from the investors, and how to actually pivot and make sure that you get the offer that you want. See, all these are people driven decisions. It's not a PPT driven decision, right? So anything that's factual, that's PPT driven, can go on your organization page. Anything that's you driven, your emotional driven, your person driven, that can be formed into a storytelling, and that can go onto your personal page. So personal brand pages are always authentic. Organization brands are always professional, always promised. The only connect is their vision, mission, and goal cannot be different. It needs to tie up at some level. Your business brand cannot say that, hey, we are huge in sustainability, and as a personal brand, you say, like, you don't mention it. That cannot happen. So the core connect needs to be there.
Great. And people like Nitin Kamath of Zerodha, you have Shantanu Deshpande of the shaving company. All of them are now actually becoming and leveraging their own personal brand in a big way for their own organization as well. And I see some of what you shared actually mapping to what I've seen them sharing in their content as well. In fact, Saurabh has a question along similar lines, which I think you already answered in part through that answer of yours. But would you want to elaborate or share a few more thoughts on this? What could be a framework for
So
personal branding for senior leaders without sounding pompous?
again,
Sorry. Mhm.
yeah, no, so
Ah,
again, I don't feel yeah. So personally, where I see from personal branding, I feel how senior you are in the company does not matter as much. Who you are as a person matters the most in personal branding. And that is why I always bring back the point where you have to understand what your brand personality is. You have to leverage your brand personality. See, because you're senior in an organization, it's not necessary for you to sound pompous, be authoritative all the time. Like I said, you may have a bitty side to it, right? And that is the side that people might connect more. What gives you credibility is the content. It's not the way you speak. The way you speak is what will resonate with the audience. The content is the actual lines or the data that you're writing is actually what will bring in credibility. Like you said, like if I'm using the correct terms of marketing and branding, you know that okay, she's credible. I may take this conversation in a witty manner, I may take it in an authoritative manner. It can be any way, right? I'm just talking how I am, which is why we connect. So again, your personality will connect people to you. Your content will bring you credibility. There is no route for being pompous anywhere. I just don't see it happening in any manner possible.
thanks. I think that should be helpful for Saurabh. He's also asked another follow-up question, which I'll bring up, where he wants to know that there is enough noise on personal branding. Any tips on how to stand out from the others?
Going back
Difficult question.
to my core, no, it's very easy. In fact, you have to know your personality. Your personality is the differentiating factor. For me, a big part of my personality is creative, and when I work with founders, I actually use a mind map wherein I help the founders discover their personality. The problem is we never think about our own self. We always see what the other person is doing. How do I actually copy the other person? How the other person's personal brand is going? We forget to look within. All the answers are always within because it's you who's speaking. You have to understand it's you who the other person is going to connect to. Everything is within you. So you have to understand who you are. When I drew my own mind map, the biggest factor that was coming out of it was creativity, and I leverage that creativity in everything I do. And the caricature that you mentioned at the start was an outcome of that creativity, because I knew that if I'm saying creativity is my biggest asset and that's my differentiating factor, I cannot use a normal infograph and show my journey. If I do that, then I'm not being true to myself. And you already caught it before the podcast was there. You already caught it, right? So it's a proof. Your brand personality becomes your biggest differentiating factor.
Awesome. And I think, like you rightly said, that sticks. If it's impactful, if it's authentic, it kind of sticks for the long run, and it frankly has in this case at least. So, hope sort of that answered your question. I also want to understand another linked concept here, which is the emergence of Chat GPT. You mentioned AI a short while ago, and honestly, I've been now seeing the influx of Chat GPT created posts, not even inspired posts. And I'm honestly, between all of us listening in today, noticing a few established voices also use a lot of Chat GPT in their communication. How do you think this is going to play out, and what does it do for their personal brand? Do people notice?
Everybody notices. If you write an AI generated comment, also, there are people who call out and they say, "Is it an AI generated comment?" And I've seen that with huge creators. If you go to their accounts and if you see a comment that you feel is repeated, because the AI only has certain information, they can't talk like you. So the information may be the same, but the way the sentence is typed out will definitely look repetitive to you. The way I type out my sentence and the way you will type out your sentence is going to be completely different, because we talk in a different manner, right? The moment you bring in AI, they are not going to talk so easily unless and until you put that effort into training the AI several number of times, right? It's a tool, you should use it, but if you're using it, use it well. There are softwares that help you train the software to talk like you, like as in narrate a story like you. My goal always is to use that as a brainstorming platform. The more you use it as a brainstorming platform, the easier it is for you to actually pull the crux out and type it out in your manner. That is what will still bring credibility to you. The moment I realize that you have used ChatGPT to write down your post, your credibility goes back to zero. Why would I even interact with it? Why would I use it? Why would I listen to you? Vikas, are you there? Your screen's frozen. I'm not sure if everyone can still hear me. If you can you guys drop in something in the chat so I know that I'm audible? I'm going to go ahead and pick one of the questions and answer, assuming you guys. Okay, I'm audible. Great, great. So I'm just going to pick up one of the questions that Priya had asked. How can brands balance authenticity with the need for growth in today's digital landscape? So, by the way, Vikas is trying to join back, and we should have him very, very soon on the link. Priya, so it's very important to stay honest to yourself, but see, you have to understand the algorithm as well. When you say you want to, there's several aspects of personal branding, one of which is gaining brand visibility. Hi, Vikas. Sorry, I just
Hi.
picked up one of the questions and I
Oh,
started
thank you so
answering it.
much. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Good to have you back. So I just took up Priya's question, which is how can brands balance authenticity with the need for growth in today's digital landscape?
Sure.
So, like I was telling Priya, there are different pillars for personal branding. One of them is visibility, the other is credibility. So, when you want visibility, you have to know the platform that you're working on. See, you can't go against the platform and do anything, right? But just to gain traction, just to make a viral post, creating something is not going to help you either. So, what I personally do is if I know there is a trending topic going on in the industry, for example, Air India had launched, a rebranded version of themselves. So rather than talking just about everything else, or rather than talking about the collaboration, in my LinkedIn account, I only spoke about how the logo is and how the rebranding is and how it's going to impact Air India, in my view, right? So you need to, even when you're picking viral topics or something that you feel will get you traction on the platform, the more you stick to your niche, the more people will resonate with you. So you get both the things, together, and that is how I would recommend doing it. I usually don't pick up topics and randomly create posts because for me it does not resonate with the kind of audience that I'm trying to create.
Cool. Thanks so much, and sorry about that tech issue which suddenly came up. But Priya, thanks for that question. We also had a question from Sahil Nair, which I have lost now, unfortunately, because of the system down time. But it was to the effect
Um,
of, sorry, do you have it?
yes, I think
Okay.
in different platforms, different audiences. How do you customize design, keeping the message uniform? Was it the gist?
Correct. That's what. Yeah. If you could
Okay,
take that,
okay.
that would be lovely.
Yeah. So what we usually do, Sahil, is like every brand has a defined logo, a defined set of colors, defined fonts. Like if you see Coca-Cola, for example, any post that you see on any platform is going to be red, right? Because the brand color of Coca-Cola is red. Similarly, for Amul, it's blue. So all the posts do have a certain amount of blue in it. You have to start seeing personal brands as equal to a business brand, right? So when you as a personal brand talk about your brand colors or your logo can be a signature as well. It's not necessary to have like a business logo design. When I work with founders, I usually tell them to get a signature design. Again, the signature is very much based on their brand personality, because we do believe that your brand personality needs to be showcased everywhere. So we design a signature for them that acts as their logo. We develop at least 2 to 3 colors for them, which are again picked from their brand personality. So if you understand color psychology, the color yellow, resonates positivity and warmth. The color red resonates boldness. Each color has its own significance, and they actually bring out certain emotion in the audience. So you need to understand the color psychology a little bit. We pick the brand personality. We also give 2 or 3 brand colors to our clients, and then we go ahead and we design a certain level of Canva templates for them for different platforms that they're going to be active on, right? So these templates are we usually design it for the Pro Canva version. They are 100% editable, and the same design language is being used everywhere, right? So if we have created one single design language for, say, LinkedIn posts, whether it's a carousel post, whether it's a single post, whether it's a video, you want the start screen and the end screen, everything can be designed in the same manner. Whether it's a YouTube banner, whether it's an Instagram reel, everything can be designed in the same manner, given it to the client, and then you just need to keep reusing it. So it's very simple. Try and equate yourself with what a business brand has in terms of assets. Try and replicate that for a personal brand, and more or less, it kind of works for you.
Great. Thanks for that, and I hope, Sahil, that answers that question for you. I'm sure Komal will be happy to share more insights or through her LinkedIn as time progresses. I have another question, Komal, for you before we wrap this up, and we still invite a couple more questions before we also select the best question of the day. Uh, like Sahil has in a sense alluded, I think the digital world is also changing so frequently. So how do you personally keep up? And in turn, also, I want to understand, how do you convince your clients to make that shift? Is everyone open to that shift? Are you able to kind of navigate them in a way that works well for their business? Throw some light on that, please.
So see, again, I think it's a mindset shift. You have to understand you cannot create the rules there. The platform is creating the rules. So, like for example, 3 months back, videos were not really gaining so much traction on LinkedIn. We know now that videos are gaining traction. So, if you don't move with the bandwagon, you are going to lose out on it, right? Again, how we work with is our brand strategy for a personal brand, and the brand personality map remains the same, and it will never change for you. You should be doing that activity every 3 to 4 months, because you as an individual will change. So the map kind of shifts that way. But ideally, your core strategy is coming out of it. So the tools can keep changing, but your message will always be the same. So your core is always the same. The way you communicate is always different. It needs to keep changing with the changing world, with the changing audience, with what the audience expects out of you. But your core never changes. So the moment you understand that, it's very easy for you to actually shift.
Cool. So, Komal, I think that's been a very lovely and insightful conversation this evening. Apart from a couple of tech issues at my end, I'm sorry about those. But overall, I think I'm sure our audience is much more aware and at least knowledgeable about personal branding and brand. Unfortunately, what's happened is that with the kind of bombardment of personal branding that we see on LinkedIn, it seems like just talk about yourself, just show yourself in fancy light, and I think the core substance, the core marketing angles to it have got missed out, which I think you brought about very beautifully. So thanks so much for that. Before we wrap up the show today, as committed and as promised to our audience, why don't you let me know which is the best question of the day, and then I can make sure that I ship the book across to the individual.
So for me, I don't remember the person's name, but the person that asked the differentiation between how to balance the personal brand and the business brand, because that's a very important aspect, and that's a question that I get every single time whenever I'm speaking to an audience, and I think it's a very, very crucial question to address.
Super. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was Alvin David. So, congratulations, Alvin. Please connect with me on LinkedIn and do share your coordinates. I'll have the book shipped to you at the earliest. Thank you once again, Komal, on behalf of everyone here this evening who's joined in, and many more who will continue watching and learning from you as this recording will stay live on the platform. It was an absolute pleasure interacting with you. And audience, thank you so much for joining in this evening. We will connect once again at a future heartfelt conversation where I'll have another guest with me to share more insights about something else which will help us. So, thanks once again from my heart.
Thank you so much, Vikas, for having me. It was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Komal. Goodbye and all the best.
See you. Bye.